My family begged me to save their hotel from bankruptcy. I invested $40K and worked 8 months nonstop. But they gave it to my golden child brother. Now, my rival hotel bankrupted them, and I discovered he stole over $100,000 from them. I'm 34 years old. I've worked in hospitality my entire adult life and built a solid career in Portland. And I need to tell this story because what my parents did to me a year ago basically broke my heart. But at the same time, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, even though that sounds contradictory. The thing is, my parents had this family hotel, lodge style, in a small town where I grew up, and the place was literally sinking in debt and mismanagement. And they called me desperate, asking for help because they knew I had experience in the business. And I, like the idiot I was, left everything to save them. Let's go back a bit. My parents bought that hotel around 2005 when I was like 14 years old, and it was always the family's pride, the big project that was going to secure our future and all that stuff. My younger brother Marcus was like 11 at the time, and from the beginning he was the favorite, the baby of the family who could do no wrong. I was the one who worked at the hotel since I was 16, cleaning rooms, working at the front desk, learning the whole business from the bottom up, while Marcus played video games and basically did the bare minimum. But well, that's how families are, I guess. I left for Portland at 22 to study hotel management and built a decent career. I worked at 3 different hotels, moved up from floor supervisor to operations manager, and by the time I was 33, I was earning, had my apartment paid off, my life was on track. And then I get the call. It was my mom, crying, telling me the hotel was in serious trouble, that they were 6 months behind on payments, that suppliers were cutting off their credit, that they were basically about to lose everything. And she begged me to come back home to help them. I spent like 2 weeks thinking about it, honestly. I knew what it meant. I knew I'd have to leave my job, my apartment, my life I had built. But they were my parents. And that hotel represented like 20 years of their life and all their savings. So I did what I thought was right. I sold my apartment in Portland, lost money on the sale because I needed liquidity fast. But whatever. Quit my job and went back to that small town where I basically hadn't done anything since I left at 22. When I arrived and saw the state of the hotel, I honestly wanted to cry. The place was deteriorated, dirty, with obsolete systems, demoralized staff because they'd gone months without salary increases. The online reviews were horrible. My dad had basically been managing everything from his gut without any real system, and my mom handled the accounting on paper sheets because she didn't understand Excel. It was a total disaster. Marcus lived in the city, was like 31 years old at that time, and worked at some sales thing that apparently wasn't going very well for him, but he almost never visited or helped with anything anyway. I got to work immediately. And when I say work, I mean I was basically 12 to 14 hours daily for 8 complete months rebuilding that place from scratch. I hired a company to renovate all the rooms, updated the reservation system to a modern digital one, implemented professional cleaning protocols, trained the staff in real customer service, renegotiated contracts with suppliers to get better prices, created a social media presence, personally responded to every negative review on the internet, explaining the changes we were making. I invested like $40,000 of my own money from the apartment sale in the most urgent renovations. Money that my parents promised to pay me back when the business stabilized. And it worked. I mean, it really worked. In 6 months, bookings went up 60%. Online reviews went from 2.5 stars to 4.2 stars. The staff was motivated because they finally had real leadership. The financial numbers were coming out of the red for the first time in years. We were generating profits again. I remember Patricia, the head of housekeeping who had been there for like 15 years, hugged me crying one day and told me she never thought she'd see the place that good again. I was exhausted but proud. I thought I had finally saved the family business and that obviously they'd give me the official position of CEO or general manager or whatever, because I was already doing that job anyway. And then comes the meeting. My parents called a meeting with all the staff on a Wednesday morning, like 8 months after I had come back. I thought they were going to officially announce my position as general manager or something like that, formalize what was already obvious. The staff was there, like 15 people, including Patricia, Sarah from the front desk who was amazing at her job, the maintenance team, everyone. And my dad stands up front and says, "We want to thank Taylor for all the hard work these past months to stabilize the hotel." And then he does a dramatic pause and says, "And now that the business is on track, we've decided it's time for Marcus to take over as CEO of the hotel." I'm not exaggerating when I say I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I stood there, literally frozen, while Marcus walks through the door. He wasn't even at the meeting initially. He arrived late, as always, with a huge smile. And my parents hug him, and everyone is supposedly celebrating, while I feel like the floor is opening up beneath my feet. Patricia looked at me with a horrified face. Sarah shook her head in disbelief, but nobody said anything because, well, they were the owners and could do whatever they wanted. After the meeting, I tried to talk to my parents privately, and my mom tells me, "Honey, we know you worked very hard, but Marcus is family and needs an opportunity. And besides, you already proved you can be successful on your own, but Marcus needs our help." And my dad adds, "And besides, the hotel was always meant to be his eventually. You have your career in Portland." And I tell them, I sold my apartment, left my job, invested my money, worked 8 months practically without salary, rebuilding this place, and you're telling me it was to give it to Marcus, who has done absolutely nothing. And my dad gets upset and tells me, "Don't be selfish. This is a family business. We all have to make sacrifices." Marcus started as CEO, officially the next week, and from day one it was a disaster. Because Marcus had no idea how to run a hotel. Zero experience, zero training, nothing. I tried to stay the first 2 weeks to do a transition and teach him basic things, but he basically ignored me or told me he had his own ideas of how to do things better. His first brilliant decision was to eliminate the complimentary continental breakfast I had implemented because, according to him, we were giving away food. I explained to him that the free breakfast was a selling point that increased bookings and that the cost was minimal compared to the benefits, but he insisted. Result: bookings started, dropping immediately because the other hotel options in the area did offer breakfast. His second brilliant decision was to fire Patricia, the head of housekeeping, because according to him, she was earning too much to be a cleaning employee. Patricia had been there 15 years, knew every corner of the hotel, trained all the new staff, was basically the operational heart of the place. When he fired her, 3 more housekeeping employees quit in solidarity. And Marcus replaced them with cheaper staff without experience. And obviously the cleaning quality dropped horribly, and the reviews started reflecting it. I couldn't watch it anymore. Like a month after Marcus took control, I completely left the hotel. I didn't officially resign because technically I never had a formal contract. I just stopped going and stopped answering my parents' calls. I stayed living in the town. He was renting a small apartment there because honestly I didn't know what to do. I had sold my apartment in Portland. I had nowhere to go back to. And I also didn't have the money to move to another city and start from scratch again because I had spent most of my savings on the hotel. I spent like 2 months basically depressed, applying to jobs online, watching how the hotel I had saved was slowly going to shit under Marcus's management. And then one day, I'm walking through town and I see this old building that was abandoned, like an old inn that had closed around 2010. It was a 2-story building, like 20 rooms, decent location near downtown, but needed total renovation. And it had a for sale sign. I don't know what happened to me, but something clicked in my head. I called the number on the sign, and it turned out the owner was desperate to sell because the building had been generating nothing for years. I met with him, reviewed the property, and ran numbers. The sale price was reasonable considering the state of the building, and I calculated that with a serious renovation investment, I could turn it into a competitive boutique hotel. But obviously I didn't have the money to buy it. Here comes the part where I was either very brave or very stupid. I still haven't decided which. I applied for a bank loan using my work history in Portland and a business plan I wrote in 2 obsessive weeks. The bank initially laughed in my face, but I got a meeting with another loan officer who reviewed my complete plan and saw my documented experience saving my parents' hotel. Ironically, that experience was what helped me get the loan. They approved me for $250,000 with a decent interest rate, but with the condition that I put all my personal credit as collateral. Meaning, if the business failed, I was completely ruined. I bought the building, I called it Elevate, and I got to work again, but this time for myself. I hired Patricia immediately as my operations manager because she was available after Marcus fired her, and she accepted happily. I hired two of the employees who had quit, in solidarity with Patricia. Sarah, the front desk girl from my parents' hotel who was really good, wrote to me one day and told me she wanted to work with me, that she couldn't stand working with Marcus anymore. Basically, I assembled a team with the best people from my parents' hotel. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. I worked 16 hours daily, supervising renovations, painting walls myself when necessary, installing things, designing every detail of the hotel. Elevate was going to be an 18-room boutique hotel. He had to reduce from the original 20 to make bigger, more modern rooms, with contemporary but cozy design, focused on personalized service and premium experience. Meanwhile, I could see from afar how my parents' hotel kept falling. The online reviews were horrible again, bookings were dropping, and my mom would call me occasionally crying, saying things were difficult, but they trusted Marcus would improve. I opened Elevate in September last year. We did a small, opening event, invited people from town, local business people, some tourism journalists from the region. The first weeks were slow, obviously, because it was a new hotel without a reputation. But Patricia and the team were amazing. Every guest received personalized attention. We left special details in the rooms. We responded to every online comment. Basically, we applied everything I knew about real hospitality. And slowly, bookings started going up. By November, we were at 60% occupancy, on average. By December, at 75%. The online reviews were excellent, 4.6 stars on average. And meanwhile, my parents' hotel kept sinking. Marcus had made like 3 more stupid decisions, including raising prices in low season, total genius, reducing maintenance staff, resulting in things being broken for weeks, and basically treating guests who complained badly. By January of this year, they were in the red again. And then my parents show up at Elevate one day. It was weird seeing them. There. Honestly. They looked older. Tired. My dad is like 61 years old now. My mom 59. And they honestly looked bad. They sat with me in the lobby, which had turned out beautiful, with a fireplace and everything, and basically begged me to come back to help them. They told me they had made a mistake giving the hotel to Marcus, that he wasn't handling things well, that they urgently needed my help to save the business again before it was too late. I looked at them and felt so many contradictory emotions. Part of me wanted to yell at them, tell them they had betrayed me, that they had used me and discarded me, but another part of me just felt pity. I told them very calmly that no, I wasn't going back to save them, that I had invested everything in my own business, and that was my focus now. My mom started crying, saying we were family, and family helps each other. And I told her, exactly, family helps each other. And you helped me by giving my job to Marcus after I saved your business. My dad got upset and told me I was being immature and vindictive, that Elevate existed thanks to what I learned at the family hotel, that I owed them something. And there I got a little heated. I told him I didn't owe them anything, that I had paid my debt, working 8 months for free, investing my money, and being betrayed by favoritism toward Marcus. I told them if they wanted to save their hotel, Marcus should find a way to do it, since supposedly he was the right one to be CEO. They left angry and hurt. 2 weeks later, I get a message from Sarah, my employee who had worked before with my parents. She tells me she needs to tell me something important, that she's been in contact with a friend who still works at my parents' hotel, and that there are rumors Marcus is doing something weird with the finances. Sarah tells me her friend found invoices for services that were never performed, payments to suppliers that don't exist, weird things. She asks me not to do anything yet because her friend is afraid of losing her job if it's discovered she talked. This put me in a complicated position, honestly. On one hand, it wasn't my problem anymore. On the other hand, they were my parents, and if Marcus was stealing or something like that, they could lose everything. I spent like a week debating internally, and in the end I decided I needed to at least investigate to know what was really happening. I hired a forensic accountant, a guy I had known in Portland who specializes in detecting corporate fraud. I gave him access to the public financial information of my parents' hotel, because it's a registered business, and asked him to review any irregularities. The accountant took like 3 weeks, and what he found was worse than I expected. Marcus had been creating fake invoices for maintenance services that were never performed, paying phantom companies that were probably his own accounts, systematically diverting money from the hotel. In 8 months, he had stolen approximately $80,000. The accountant found recurring payments to a consulting company that didn't exist, equipment purchases that never arrived at the hotel, inflated travel expenses that Marcus justified as business trips, but that coincided with his personal vacations, according to his social media. I had all the evidence documented, with dates, amounts, patterns, and now I had to decide what to do with that information. I honestly, seriously considered just staying quiet and letting my parents' hotel keep sinking. It would be poetic justice in a way, that they'd lose everything for having chosen Marcus over me. But I couldn't do it. Not because I forgave them or because I wasn't still angry, but because I'm not that person. I can't see someone being robbed, even if they treated me badly, and do nothing. I asked for a meeting with my parents. I told them I had important information they needed to see. We met at a neutral cafe. I didn't want to do it at Elevate or at their hotel. I put the folder with all the evidence in front of them and told them, "Your son is stealing from you." They were in shock, obviously. My mom started denying immediately, saying that was impossible, that Marcus would never do that I was just making things up because I was resentful. My dad reviewed the documents quietly, and I could see on his face that he knew it was real. I explained every point of the evidence to them, every fake invoice, every suspicious payment. I showed them the patterns, the dates, everything. My mom kept denying. But my dad finally said, "This makes sense with some things I've noticed. Money that disappears. Expenses that don't add up." I asked my dad why he hadn't investigated before, and he just shook his head and said, "I didn't want to believe my son could do this." What happened next was total chaos. My parents confronted Marcus, who first denied everything, then admitted some payments but said they were legitimate, then basically broke down and admitted he had been taking money from the hotel, but that he was going to return it eventually. My parents discovered Marcus had gambling problems, that he had been going to casinos regularly, that he owed money to dangerous people even, and that he had basically used the hotel as his personal bank to finance his addiction. My parents decided not to call the police immediately. I think they still hoped to fix things as a family, but they did remove Marcus from the position immediately. Marcus basically left town, went to live with a friend in another city, and as far as I know, my parents forced him to enter a rehabilitation program for gamblers. The internal investigation they did showed Marcus had stolen even more than the initial accountant had found, probably more than $100,000 total. The hotel was left in a disastrous financial position. Not only had they lost all the progress I had made, but now they were more in debt than ever because of Marcus's theft. The business bank accounts were temporarily frozen during the fraud investigation. It was basically unsalvageable at this point, at least not without a massive money investment my parents didn't have. My parents came to see me again. This time they weren't coming to ask me to save the hotel, because we both knew that wasn't possible anymore. They were coming to apologize. It was a long and painful conversation. My mom cried a lot, admitted they had been unfair to me, that they had favored Marcus his whole life because he was the youngest, and they always saw him as more fragile, more in need of their help. My dad admitted they had made a terrible mistake, ignoring my contributions and giving the hotel to Marcus without preparation. I asked them directly, if Marcus hadn't stolen, if the hotel had simply kept declining from bad management but without fraud, would you have eventually asked me for forgiveness for how you treated me? Or would you have kept justifying your decision? My dad couldn't answer. My mom said honestly, "Probably not. We probably would have kept blaming you for not helping more or for leaving." It was brutal to hear, but at least it was honest. I didn't forgive them right there, and I told them that clearly. I told them I appreciated the apology, but that I needed time to process everything, and that I honestly didn't know if I could have a normal relationship with them again. I told them they could eventually lose the hotel, and that it wasn't my responsibility to fix. They left sad, but accepted my position. It's been like 4 months since that. Elevate keeps growing. We're almost always full, especially on weekends. I hired 2 more staff people because we needed more capacity. Patricia is amazing as operations manager. The team works like clockwork. Financially, I'm paying the loan without problems, and I'm even considering eventually buying the building next door. That's also for sale. To expand. My parents' hotel finally closed last month. They couldn't recover from all the financial damage. They sold it to a regional hotel chain for much less than it was worth, basically only recovered enough to pay the most urgent debts. My parents are now living in a small apartment. My dad found work at a local hardware store. My mom works part-time at an office. It's sad to see them like that, honestly, but I also don't feel like it's my fault or my responsibility to save them again. Marcus is still in rehab, as far as I know. I haven't talked to him since all this exploded, and honestly, I have no desire to. My parents have invited me to dinner like 3 times in these months. I went once. It was awkward but civil. I don't know if I'm going to rebuild a close relationship with them ever, but at least we're talking. Last week, a couple of guests who stayed at Elevate left me an online review that said it was the best boutique hotel they'd been to in years, that the service was exceptional, that every detail was thoughtfully considered. Patricia showed me the review with a huge smile, and I realized I built this, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I was finally working for myself and not waiting for my family to value my effort. Do I regret having sold my apartment in Portland and having gone back to help my parents initially? Honestly, I don't know. It was painful and cost me a lot, but without that experience, I probably never would have had the knowledge or motivation to create and elevate. So I guess in the end, what my parents took from me forced me to build something better on my own. I don't know if that's karma or justice or just life being weird, but here I am, with my own successful hotel, sleeping well, knowing nobody can take it from me this time.